334 BCE. The Granicus River, Asia Minor. You are standing on the western bank of a swamp. On the far side, approximately 40,000 Persian troops wait, their banners snapping in the cold wind. 20,000 cavalry are positioned along the high ground overlooking the banks, turning the cliffs into a wall of death. Behind them stand thousands of Greek mercenaries and elite Persian infantry. This is the first army assembled to stop the Macedonian invasion. Alexander has just crossed into Asia. His treasury can fund this campaign for barely a month. If he fails here, the invasion ends before it begins. He commands roughly 18,000 men. Across the river, the Persian commanders hold an army nearly twice his strength, plus the advantage of elevation,
forcing any advance to move uphill, through water, right into prepared cavalry. His senior general advises waiting until morning.
But waiting creates a different risk. The longer the army remains on the western bank, the more time Persian forces have to concentrate inland. Alexander must decide: cross now, or allow the defenders to dictate when the next battle will be fought. He orders an immediate assault. Cavalry first, straight into the river. Within minutes, Alexander is fighting in the current.
Surrounded by Persian nobles, one blow could end the invasion before it begins. Now watch what happens.
By the end of this journey, you will see how Alexander survived the crossing, leading from the front to shatter a legendary empire. To understand how Alexander reached this moment, we need to step back to April 334 BCE, when he crossed the Hellespont. With 37,000 men and barely enough money to pay them for a month, he set foot in foreign lands with everything on the line. Back home in Macedon, taxes had been repealed, loans taken from nobles, and the royal treasury was running entirely on fumes.
This was not an invasion funded by wealth. It was funded by momentum. Which meant one thing.
No spoils, no campaign. Everything depended on winning fast, while the Persian governors were still scrambling to respond. While Alexander marched east, the Persian governors were meeting. Their army was assembled near Zelea, under experienced commanders. Among the advisors was a man named Memnon of Rhodes. He was an experienced Greek leader who had spent years in the service of the Persian court. He was the only man in that room who understood Macedonian finances. His advice was simple, brutal, and effective. Don't fight. Burn the crops, destroy the supplies, and withdraw inland. Use the Persian fleet to cut Alexander off from Greece. Let the invasion collapse under its own weight. He was right. Alexander's army could not survive in hostile territory without immediate plunder. A scorched earth strategy would have ended the campaign without a single major battle. But the Persian satraps rejected him.
They suspected his motives. They were proud, and they did not want a Greek telling them to burn their own land. So they gave Alexander what he needed most:
a decisive engagement. The Persian army marched west, taking position on the eastern bank of the Granicus River. It was a strong position. The river ran fast, the banks were steep and muddy, and any force crossing would lose formation in the current. Waiting at the top of that bank were 20,000 cavalry, ready to strike the moment Macedonian soldiers climbed out of the water. Behind them stood 15,000 Persian infantry forming the supporting line, backed by Greek mercenary hoplites further back. The logic of the Persian deployment was straightforward. Let the Macedonians struggle through mud and current, then crush them on the slope. Crossing meant losing formation, and losing formation meant death. Alexander arrived in the mid-afternoon, but parts of his army were still behind. Garrisons had been left along the route, and columns were still marching. When Alexander reached the battlefield, only 18,000 men stood ready.
His senior general immediately assessed the situation. Wait until morning, he advised. Cross at dawn. The Persians may withdraw during the night.
If not, at least the army would be rested. Crossing now, in the afternoon, against prepared cavalry was an unnecessary risk. The advice was rational. Attacking across a defended river at dusk is a terrible idea. Alexander refused. Whether the exact exchange was recorded accurately, historians debate, but the tactical reality was not in question. Waiting gave the Persians time to concentrate inland, time to receive reinforcements, time to choose a different battlefield on their terms.
Alexander needed a battle on this river, today! So he ordered an immediate assault.
Alexander had a plan. He didn't lead with his best troops first across. Instead, he sent a vanguard. They entered the river under immediate missile fire. Javelins rained from the bank, the current disrupted formation, and horses lost footing in the mud. The Persians saw an opportunity. If the Macedonians could be pushed back into the river, the crossing would collapse.
Persian cavalry descended from the high ground into the riverbed to meet them. Close combat began in the water.
The vanguard was pushed back, losses mounted. From the Persian perspective, the assault was failing, giving them confidence to press forward. But that moment, that illusion of Macedonian collapse, was exactly what Alexander had been waiting for. The Persians had moved. They had descended from the high bank to press the attack in the river. Their defensive formation had opened. Then Alexander moved. Instead of crossing directly into the strongest Persian concentration, he angled his companion cavalry. Then, at the moment of maximum Persian distraction, he wheeled left and charged. The companions hit the Persian left wing in wedge formation. Cornelwood lances extended, horse against horse. There was no room to maneuver, no depth for cavalry shock tactics. The fighting became close quarters, more like infantry combat, mounted. Arrian describes it directly: horse against horse, man against man. The Macedonians fought to force the Persians from the bank, while the Persians fought to hurl them back into the water. Alexander was unmistakable. Distinctive armor, royal bodyguard riding alongside him. The Persian nobles saw him, and they came for him directly. Mithridates, Darius' own son-in-law, charged straight at the king. Alexander's lance took him in the face. Another noble, Ruasaces, slashed at Alexander's helmet. The blow struck Alexander with terrifying force. His helmet was damaged, and for a few while the cavalry fought, the Macedonian phalanx began to move, step by step. Sardis leveled. The phalanx met the Persian cavalry near the edge of the river. Formation compressed, but it did not break. Even in the current, the reach of the Sardis kept the horsemen at distance. As more ranks pushed forward behind them, the Macedonian line began to gain ground. The long pikes forced the cavalry back from the riverbank. The phalanx pushed its way across. Only then did the Persian infantry finally meet the phalanx. But on open ground, they were no match for the Macedonian formation. The Persian left began to collapse. Then the center fractured. A wave of panic spread from Alexander's point of impact all the way to Parmenion's wing on the left. Some Persian units were caught in the retreat, fighting desperately as the line disintegrated around them. Others used their cavalry to break contact and escape. The bank was lost. Behind the collapsing Persian army stood the Greek mercenaries. They had not committed to the battle. They had watched. They were still formed, still disciplined. They withdrew to higher ground and locked shields, spears forward. They requested negotiation. Alexander refused. The political logic was clear. Greeks fighting for Persian gold undermined that entirely. But there was military logic too. If these mercenaries escaped, they would strengthen the next Persian army.
The phalanx advanced frontally. Sardis forced back the hoplite line. Cavalry enveloped both flanks. The mercenaries fought hard.
Macedonian casualties were likely higher in this phase than during the river crossing itself. Eventually, surrounded, exhausted, their formation collapsed. Approximately 2,000 were captured. Thousands more were killed. The prisoners were sent to Macedon to work the mines. Alexander made an example of them. Serve Persia, and there would be no clemency. Ancient casualty figures vary widely. Arrian claims roughly 115 Macedonian dead. Persian cavalry losses likely ranged between 1,000 and 2,500. Between 3,000 and 5,000 Greek mercenaries were killed or captured.
But one fact stands out. The Persian army was not annihilated. 3/4 of it escaped. Memnon survived.
The empire was not shattered at Granicus, and yet something irreversible had occurred. One by one, Western Anatolian cities capitulated. For the first time, a Persian regional capital fell. The defensive line in Asia Minor had collapsed. Alexander now had revenue, treasure, supplies, momentum. The invasion would continue. This was not the largest battle Alexander would fight, not the most strategically complex, not the one that broke the empire. But it was the first. And it proved three things that would define everything that followed.
Persia could be beaten in open field battle. That was not obvious in 334 BCE. It became obvious the afternoon of the Granicus crossing.
Second, Alexander would lead from the front. He would accept personal risk. He would stand alongside his men, not behind them. In ancient warfare, perception was a strategic asset.
An army that believes its king is willing to die for them fights differently. Third, the invasion was survivable, not just militarily, financially. Alexander had crossed after Granicus. He had cities, treasuries, time. Granicus was reckless. Parmenion's caution was rational. Alexander survived by a margin measured in seconds, but the battle established something vital.
Granicus did not win him the empire. It proved the empire could be taken.
Far to the east, Darius III finally understood what was happening. This was no raid, no border disturbance. A Macedonian king had defeated a Persian army and was advancing through Asia Minor, unopposed.
The next encounter would not be with satraps. It would be with the great king himself.
And the battlefield would not be a river, but a narrow coastal plain where two empires would collide.
Watch the Battle of Issus now. History never truly disappears. The echoes of Granicus still resonate through time.
What ancient battlefield or lost civilization should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below. The discipline of the Phalanx changed warfare forever, turning ordinary men into an unstoppable wall of bronze. Every soldier knew that breaking formation meant instant death, anchoring their courage in absolute unity.
The roar of thousands of war horses shaking the riverbanks created a symphony of pure terror. In the heart of the chaos, kings and commanders fought not from a distance, but blade to blade.
The waters of the Granicus ran red, stained by the ambitions of two colliding worlds.
Generations later, chroniclers would write of this day as the turning point of the ancient world.
From the ashes of riverbanks and burning fields, a legend was forged that nothing could stop.
The Persian Empire, once thought eternal, found its foundations trembling beneath Macedonian steel.
Bridges were crossed, rivers conquered, and the map of the known world was rewritten forever. Thank you for joining this journey into the ancient past. If history fascinates you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more epic reconstructions. The discipline of the Macedonian silver shields remained unbroken, even as the sun began to set over the blood-soaked valley. Exhausted soldiers tended to their wounds by torchlight, whispering stories of the king's bravery in the river current. In the royal tent, maps were redrawn. The western gates of Asia were now wide open, waiting for the conqueror's next move. Spies and scouts galloped through the night, carrying the shocking news of the defeat straight to the heart of the Persian court. Across the empire, local governors panicked, realizing that the invincible barrier of the satrapal armies had crumbled into dust. Alexander stood upon a high bluff, looking out toward the vast, untamed interior of a continent ripe for the taking. The wealth of Sardis and the marble temples of Ephesus filled the royal coffers, ensuring the campaign would march onward. Yet, amidst the triumph, the ghost of the Granicus remained, a reminder that glory is bought with blood and iron. The Phalanx reformed, their long pikes catching the morning light as they prepared for the long road to Persepolis. An empire 2 centuries old now realized its days were numbered. Facing a storm it could neither outrun nor outfight. History belongs to the bold. And on the banks of the Granicus, Alexander wrote his name across the stars. The journey had only just begun. Subscribe to witness the next chapter of the greatest conquest in human history.